Hi there, and welcome to Inspire Care 360, our ECE Leadership webinar, Why Advocacy Matters for Childcare Owners. And we'll be featuring Cindy Linhoff, Director of the NCCA. So I would like for all of you to drop in the chat where you're joining from. Um, let's see. Hi from Kansas, Trailblazers Academy. Hello there. Please drop it in the chat. I would love to know where you're joining from. So yes, I'm from Indiana here. I am, this is going to be a good one. Hi, Gigi's Child Care, Wichita, Kansas. Nice to have you. Welcome. Hello there, Jen from Texas. Welcome. Hi, my name is Kim, and I'll be your MC today. I am the Business Development Director with Inspire Care 360. I've been here with Inspire Care for over 4 years. And I'm just, I found my passion in the ECE industry. And I'm focused on, creating positive learning and working environments. And I've led many business development initiatives for the child care centers. And so I will drop my link in the chat and feel free to set some time with me and we can meet and talk about Inspire Care 360. This is going to be a good one today. All right. And so we're going to do a little housekeeping. So while waiting for others to join in, here are some reminders. So, like I said, let us know where you're joining from. I would love to hear and utilize the chat box throughout our discussion. And we'll be checking our Q&A section live and we'll answer those live as well. Yes, please put where you're from in the chat box. I'd love to hear from you. All right. And so what we'll discuss today, we'll learn about what Inspire Care 360 offers, our affordable staff health care, as well as our star rating and reputation. We'll then meet our guest, Cindy Linhoff. She is a plethora of knowledge. I was lucky enough to meet her this morning. She's amazing. And so we'll discuss, why advocacy is so important to child care owners. And also we have a special offer. So explore our solutions and earn a $30 gift card. And I'll drop my link in so you can schedule that with me. I'm looking forward to speaking to you about Inspire Care 360. All right. And if you're seeking a CEU certificate, check in the chat box. We'll drop that in as well. Now, a friendly reminder, you must follow the link and you'll need to fill out the form to receive your certificate. And if the link does not work, just copy and paste it in your browser. Okay? All right. And two, meet our host. So I have nothing but good things to say about this man. I've worked with him for 4 years. He is an owner and operator of 4 of our own schools as well. He's had 30 years, and I just don't think you need much more introduction, Tony. So I'm just going to hand it to you because you know how we all feel here.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And Regina, what a sweet thing to say. You're very sweet on there. And Isabella, thank you too for joining. Kim, thank you for the introduction. We greatly appreciate you and everything you do for us. So thank you. And I will take over the mantle from here.
Sure. Thank you so much.
All right, we will talk to you soon, and let's continue the journey today. So, as part of our journey today, um, we are going to first do a little bit of housekeeping for those of you who currently do not have a real strong healthcare solution. If you're using like Aflac or MetLife or one of those type of programs, that's okay. And yes, I know it's a burden because you're like, I can't afford to do major medical for our staff. But we've come up with a solution over the past couple of years, and it's called Healthy Advantage. It's sort of a hybrid solution. It gives a lot of the features and functionalities to your staff as well as to you. I use it myself personally. My head of overall operations uses it, as well as most of our staff and all in my childcare. When we advertise at my childcare schools, it is one of the first things we say to differentiate ourselves. And the main reason is it has flexibility with 5 different options. Plus, we do have supplemental programs. But the very cool thing is, for instance, one of the programs of these that's relatively and very affordable and very flexible, $15 office visits and $15 specialist visits. This is face to face. This isn't over the phone. $50 urgent care, $50 lab work, things of that nature. There are no high premiums. So for instance, with that program right there we talked about for an employee, for one individual, it's about $130 a month compared to a major medical program that's over $400 a month right now. Or a family program that would be close to $300 a month for this program compared to like $1,300 a month for a major medical program. There are also no deductibles. With those programs I just mentioned for major medical, they start like at $6,000 upwards to $10,000 you have to pay in first. So I know when I've talked to directors before in my schools and said, hey, you're the only one who's taken the program because everybody else can't afford it. And they'll be like, well, I didn't use it. Why didn't you use it? Well, I had to pay a huge deductible up front. This was before we came up with this program. And so now everybody's able to use it. They're able to readily available. It has prescription programs. It also includes telemedicine programs. And for the owner, the cool part about this is for the up to the first 10 individuals, it is $50 a person a month, which is really small potatoes when it's compared to spending half or paying for half of a major medical, which is like $200 a month for an employee. And then after that, it goes down to $25 per person. So your 11th person on board, it only costs you 25. It's a great program, even if you don't have enough staff members for some reason, you still have the ability to offer this program, very lucrative. And again, all the programs include telemedicine. I use telemedicine all the time now, way more than I go to my major medical because it's so easy and it meets the requirements for the Affordable Care Act. So if your school has more than 50 FTEs, or maybe you and your partners or yourself own different businesses outside of the childcare industry, it's still called discrimination testing, where if you have more than 50 employees altogether, this program meets that. And it also offers full benefit administration. So what does that mean? That means that we help do all the census work. We do all the work to find out about and educate your staff as to who wants to be offered it and who wants in, who wants out, all those things. And we can answer all your questions for you. Just get a hold of Kim and she'll set up a conversation with you and go through it all. And then we also do the payroll administration, making sure everything's set up for every payroll so you don't have to lift a finger. So that is Healthy Advantage. And if you want to learn more about it, we're coming into the fall where a lot of people look at putting out their open enrollment time, but you'd have to do it now. You can't do it in September and October and expect to get it done by October. It takes about a month and a half or so to get it set up at the minimum. So please reach out. Another program that we have, which has been super popular, and everybody who has taken on IC360 Rep, we don't think we've ever had a person leave it IC360 Rep because it's so valuable. It really is about managing your reputation. In our industry, reputation is everything if you think about it. If someone's going to a new town and they want childcare, they go right to their smartphone device. And what do? They put in childcare locally, and all these little flags pop up, but it also has star ratings. If for some reason you have 3 stars or under, they're not even going to go to you. But let's say you have 5 stars, but only 2 reviews, and a school near you has 4 stars, but about 200 reviews. Which one looks like it's much more trusted? The actual 4-star with 200 plus reviews. So with our program, you really can manage your reputation. You send out to your families, you can send it out to your staff, you can send it out to your in your tours, post tour. How did the tour go? You can also send it out to staff after an interview when you've interviewed staff. But this is about building your brand, building your reputation, making sure you're getting a lot of the positive star ratings. And if you get a negative star rating, it comes to you first so you can review it and you can get back to them and try to fix it before it ever goes online. So it's very proactive, gives you all different types of insights. You also can load up other schools in your area and it'll tell you what they're doing from a star rating point of view. So it gives you a leg up on your competition. There is AI ready prompts, which means is that you can do auto responses. So someone gives you a positive response, you can immediately have AI say, hey, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. If there's a negative response, you would properly approach from a marketing standpoint of how to respond without it coming across confrontational, which is super important. And the program does this all automatically for you and then gives you some great insights. Once you set the program up and start running it, it runs very much in an automated fashion and you can drive it as much as you want. Kim would be the one to talk to, and I'm sure she would help. But now, the drum roll for my good friend Cindy Lenhoff. Cindy, if you want to come on, that'd be awesome. And Cindy is our guest today. So, Cindy, I know there she is. Wonderful, Cindy. How
Hello,
are you again?
good to see you, Tony.
We always act as if we haven't had a little pre-call, but we have, and it's always great to see her, and I'm so happy to have her back. Cindy has presented with us before. We've been to NCCA, which stands for National Child Care Association, and Cindy is doing, as they call the yeoman's work. She's doing really foundational work for our industry to benefit everybody out there. It really is. And, of course, uh, to do that, you've had to be in this industry a while. So when you look at the years that she's invested, she has been in leadership roles throughout the time. And I remember talking to Cindy early on in our conversation. And she's like, I was just a parent. I never even want to be involved with childcare. And she goes, but then again, they dragged me in and they brought me in. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's 40 years later. Is that about right?
It's about right.
So I'm so jazzed and excited. She has been really leading and resurging since she got re-involved back in 2019. And I remember when she rejoined for NCCA, that organization just took off like a rocket and really becoming a national advocate for the program. But Cindy, why don't you, before we get started with the talk today, tell us a little bit about NCCA and why you're so passionate about it.
Well, I am passionate about helping those independent childcare business and early education owners because I had the opportunity of working for one of the large companies. It was La Petite Academy when I first went to work for them in 1980 as a 3 hour a day preschool teacher. And then I was promoted because there was growth. The family that owned it decided to grow it, and it became the second largest company, childcare company. And I had the opportunity to grow with them. And I retired in 2009. No, I retired in 2016 as a vice president of operations. But one of the things that I can tell you is that I was always a member of our local child care association, and I worked closely with the independent owners because they had, they knew what was going on in the community that they were working in, and I needed to know what was going on because sometimes what was going on at the national level or in another state didn't really apply, to what was happening in Oklahoma. And I really got involved with them when the oil industry went under in 1980, and I was a district manager of 8 centers that were just opened and we were not doing well. And I got invited to join the Oklahoma Child Care Association, and I did, and I stayed because those individuals helped me be a businesswoman in my community. And I in turn helped them with some of the things that I knew from working with a large corporation that would help them. So I know that working together, whether we're independently owned or whether we're company owned, we all have the same pain and the same desire.
Yeah,
So
and you're right about
that's
that. So thanks for a little bit of that background. And so today's discussion is advocacy in childcare and early learning space, why owners and operators should engage, and examples of owners driving change. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Cindy, for the presentation, and you can start, I think this is your slide deck, so let's go.
all right. Well, one of the things I learned from being a member of the Oklahoma Child Care Association for many years and a board member was that we often had to advocate for what we needed from our Department of Human Services, our lead agency at that time for child care licensing, and also from our legislature, because Oklahoma is a state and has long been a state where 50% of all children live in low-income circumstances. So we relied on, public money that came from the Child Care Development Block Grant and the food program. And so in learning from that organization and being a part of that voice, we made a lot of progress. Well, now we're in a place in time where we need to make progress at the national, state, and local level. And so I have long been a fan of advocating as a childcare, business operator, because while I didn't own it, I was still operating them like they were my own. And that's how I made my living. But I also wanted to make it in a way that I was proud of what we were doing, which I know all of you want to do. So let's talk a little bit about why the how, the why, the what of you as a very busy business owner, how you can get involved and get this voice to be bigger and more unified so we can get the help we need in the areas of the country that need it. So first of all, I just want you to think about, as owners and directors of a child care center, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about? And if a couple of you could just put it into the chat, what
Perfect.
worries you about your childcare business?
And while we're waiting for that to come into the chat with a few things, because I actually own and operate my own schools too, there are a number of things, and quite oftentimes we feel independently like an island, right? That it is difficult for us to have our voices heard. So maybe in today's presentation, you can give us some insights of how to sort of rally the troops, or how to get our voices a little bit more prominent out there. So,
That's my goal.
yeah, exactly. So I do know that I haven't had a question come in yet. And hey, guys out there, do not hesitate to be out there. But I'm going to tell you, my number one thing that keeps me up at night is quality staff. My number one issue is finding, recruiting, retaining, and managing quality staff. But one of the number one things that also scares the heck out of my staff, I'll use good words here, is that in New York State, where my schools are, we have licensing that oftentimes just walks in and scares everybody to death all the time. And there doesn't seem to be any reins on that, where there's no kind of a good solid overall relationship with licensing. We have a good relationship with them one-on-one, but when I talk to different owners in the area, they're always like, they feel like everybody's intimidated and scared. So we haven't had other people come in, but let me pull up the first one you have here. Oh, look at that. Something similar.
That's one, I will tell you, the one that you stated first is number one in all of my conversations with providers across the United States.
And why do you think that is too, in addition to like what I talked about? Why do you think this is such an issue today? And when you started, you were talking back in the 80s. So when you look at it and you've watched the evolution in our industry, and I know that people like Regina or myself or others that are on the call, a lot of times we're just scratching our head and we're trying to do the same thing to recruit and retain and like put in programs like healthcare, whatever. But what do you think is it, Cindy, that you've observed that could be done at the federal, state, or local level to support us in this area?
Well, I can tell you what I think is one of the root causes, and you have to identify the root cause before you can come up with a solution. But I can tell you as far back as 10 or 15 years ago, having worked with centers that were accredited and maintaining the accreditation or the quality rating scale, that the states had, we had to have a minimum number of teachers that were credentialed or degreed. And I know in my home state, there was a lot of money and effort put into getting individuals as far back as 2000, 2005, and getting the individuals working in childcare centers that typically didn't have any of these things going to earn credentials and degrees. And there was a big push, and this happened across the country in some areas more than others, to get them to have bachelor degrees. Well, lo and behold, as states started offering pre-K programs in the public schools as a way to shore up their revenue streams,
Mm-hmm.
um, we started losing those degreed and credentialed people. And the
Yeah.
reason is there's no regulation that they have to follow. So technically, it's easier to teach in a public school because they're not dealing with licensing.
Nope.
And they typically have lower ratios that are mandated by their own school system. And then these individuals no longer have to worry about feeding children, putting them down for a nap, doing any of the auxiliary things that our staff have to do throughout the normal 10-hour day. And they also are paid much better. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying their job's easy. I'm not saying that. And they have the benefits, the retirement programs. I can't blame them, for leaving because public, the public's taxation, all of that pays for that in the public schools. And we're actually seeing an increase in that. And in many cases, it's really behind closed doors. I mean, Texas is putting so much money into their public school system for 3 and 4-year-olds. And ultimately, they put nothing into childcare.
Yeah.
They
And
only rely on federal funds. So I think that's the root cause. So I think at some point there has to be parity. If the public school is going to watch 3 and 4-year-olds, then they have to get in line with what licensing requires of all of us. And we also should be entitled to the same funding streams in childcare centers in order to pay degreed and credentialed staff at that same level. And I'm not suggesting that everybody need to have a degree or a credential, because I think a good center has, a variety of talents. And I've seen people without degrees have more heart than the people with degrees.
yeah.
So you got to have a well-rounded team, but since we don't get to determine always what that looks like. So I think that's our biggest, opportunity and challenge.
So Cindy, let me ask you about that because in my schools, of the schools that I have UPK programs in each one of the schools. So similar to what you said in New York State, we are taking on anywhere from 18 to 36 kids that come from the school district. Now we get funding at about a fourth of the value of revenue we would have received when we used to have these kids come directly to us. So we're getting significantly less. Some of the school districts have pulled all the kids away from us. So some of my schools don't get any kids, but we've had our 4-year-olds taken away from us. They're now talking about taking the 3-year-olds away. Okay. Exactly what you said. They get funded by the state. They get funded for their staffing, their staff, where we're paying on average anywhere from, $18, $19 an hour for our UPK teachers, possibly $20 an hour. Which is still pretty high compared to some other childcares. They're paying their teachers $75,000 a year. Okay. So they're just blowing us away. Then they have lifetime benefits. There's no reason, like you said, for a teacher, a qualified teacher, to come to us when they can go to the school district and make significantly more. And if I was a teacher, I would do the same thing. So we have the constraints of tighter ratios, not the expansive ratios like in New York State. We have for our 4-year-olds, it's 8-1. Yet when you look at what a classroom is for a UPK, they have 20-1. It's a crazy difference. And then on top of it, they hold us, not only does licensing hold us to these standards that the public school district doesn't have, but then the public school district is holding us to requirements to run the UPK programs that they don't even abide by themselves. So it is a big double-edged sword. And we had an issue even last year, to get a little bit into the woods with it, is we had a child who had a behavioral issue, significant behavioral issue, and turned out that was part of the UPK program that they sent to us. Now, if that child just came to us, we have operating procedures of how we work with that family. However, we couldn't even follow our own operating procedures. The school district's like, nope, you just have to keep that child. So we had a child who was interloping. We had a child who was, just total tantrum, breaking things all across there, and we could not do a thing. So when you look at where the US, all the states are going towards the UPK program, and you look at the advocacy side, and I'm sort of truncating some of your presentation a little bit to get into some of the meat of it. Where do you see things, being where this main root cause you brought up? How do you see advocacy being supported here? Because, like you mentioned before, parents will probably be on the side of, hey, listen, I don't have to pay for UPK because we all pay for it as taxpayers. I don't have to pay for it individually, but if I go to you guys directly, I have to pay for it.
Well, again, I think it's going to be up to us to educate the parents. Especially like, take for instance, the situation you just brought up. You have a child that the needs of that child cannot be met in a
Nope,
group, in a group setting.
we're not
And,
built for it.
and and this is an issue I hear a lot of, is that we, as the provider, we do have a process that we follow to try to help that child. And when we can't help that child, we as private providers can say, you know what, we don't have the resources, and let us offer you, other opportunities. But I know from talking with school teachers that have actually left teaching school because of the issue you just pointed out, the behavior of children is the point that our classroom teachers feel, threatened.
Yes.
And so part of the drain on teachers in the K through 12 system, or in this case, pre-K through 12, has to do with the fact that it opens doors for the educators that we are sending them, because we have, tried to hire people to meet some of the requirements of like quality rating. But
Yep.
again, we have all these such, I would be, if I were the parents of the other children in the class, and again, that goes back to confidentiality, but I know from having children and grandchildren, those kids complain.
Oh, yeah.
But usually after the first week, who the child is in your child's class that is disruptive and causing issues. But as far as like, the cost of doing business for private centers, and then parents can't afford that and literally can't, but the provider can't charge less, they're kind of forced into that free pre-K. And it's like, now we don't really have parental choice. And maybe
No.
parents need to demand parental choice. And maybe that if we had more people contacting, their legislators, because this is what we hear all the time at the federal level. Well, we need to hear from our constituents. Well, we didn't know that was a problem. And it's like, really? You honestly did not know that was a problem. Um, and that's the other way. We've got to activate our owners of childcare businesses to be very specific, to say, look, I'm not going to be able to continue, running my business. I care for X amount of children. And I'm already in a desert where people can't find care, or I could be offering care to 100 children, but I only have enough staff for 50. We've got to tell more stories, and it can't come from me, just me and the other, advocates. We have to become a united front of advocates. And one of the things that, and there are some things I can recommend on how to enter that world that, are part of this, presentation, is to say, if you're laying awake at night and you're worrying about this or any of the other things that I had listed, but this is the number one, you can't just sit at your desk and complain.
Yeah.
You
No.
have to find a group that has the same pain and the same desire to come together and say, where do we take these concerns and how do we deal with it? And, that's part of what we do at the federal level. There's three, levels of advocacy, and they all work together. And that's local, state, and federal. But I do firmly believe that we've got to get our arms around some of the federal policies that actually, do not do anything to promote any kind of equitable care and education for young children. And again, I wish it didn't have to be that way, but this is a very labor intensive, very heavy labor intensive industry. And
So
more
let me
so where
ask you,
you're at, Tony, because the ratios are much higher in the South. But then
yes,
that's a whole nother issue, because that's why prices are less in the South. But
right.
again, the behavior issues and things that go on at that level. But until you come together with a group that has the same issue you have and begin discussing, how do we take this to the decision makers? And that's, what we're doing at the federal level, is taking issues to the decision makers. I mean, I am constantly knocking on the doors of people that are deciding for us
Right.
and
And
getting other individuals involved
so
in
Cindy,
doing
let
it.
me ask you, one of the things that happens, especially at the federal level, but also happens at the state level and local, but is our government, we know, as we talked about a little bit before we joined this call, it's not really Democrat and Republic. Some of them have their benefits, some of them have their detractors, whatever. But it really comes down to the population as to the government. And we're like on two separate sides of the fence. If the government can get away with what they get away with today and not lift a finger, they're going to do that. It makes it easier for them. With us, we struggle, and then they have to hear our voices. But you're all talking about, how do they hear our voices? So the question I pose to you is, typically when, currently today, I know things are underway to possibly change this, but that will still be a long way, is lobbyists are probably the number one way that you influence change with the government. Is NCCA or any of your sister type of organizations working with any kind of dedicated, paid for lobbyists who are trying to move the needle for our organizations too?
Well, the answer to that is yes. We do not have lobbyists.
Okay.
We try to make our voice heard through working with other organizations that do um, a lot of advocacy work in DC, Child Care Aware of America, First 5 Years, um, the Bipartisan Policy Center, people that all know the problem. And excuse me, are pushing as advocates. There is one group, the ECEC, Early Childhood Education Consortium. And actually, we have a very informal partnership with them every other month. We partner with them to do a Child Care Champions Alliance call so that everyone is aware of what the issues that are on the table and being discussed, because you want to go in when the iron is hot. And one of our most recent discussions, of course, is appropriations, for fiscal year 2026, and letting people who participate in that call know how to get involved and contact their individual state, federal legislators. And we give them verbiage. We tell them what to say, but we also say, tell them your story. If you're getting ready to close your center that's been in operation for 25 years, give them the why and
Right.
how that's going to impact families. Now, ECEC also, because they are the voice of the large companies, the large multi-site companies like Learning Care Group, KinderCare, Cadence, Bright Horizons. The one thing that I know from working closely with them is, we have the same pain and we need the same thing. They also are pretty active in some states where they are directed by their members, again, who are large companies, to, go into and see if they can do something, to help the situation. And ultimately, they do have paid lobbyists. But one thing I would say to you is that, I was reading recently and learning more about how much money they put into the lobby. And I think the latest figure for the latest year of reporting was not even, $400,000.
Wow. Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
again, that goes back to, we're not the NRA, we're not big pharma, and even the big company. And again, I work for the big companies, and it takes a lot of schools, to come together to make money, and a lot of efficiency practices. They've had technology and things for years that have helped, but at the same time, it costs a lot of money to have all those things, and most of those centers charge a lot more than our independently owned childcare centers. But again, we're all operating under the same pain. Nobody has teachers
Yeah.
that are staying. No, they aren't people like me that walk through the door to enroll my child, and I ended up accepting a 3-hour-a-day job and stayed for 36 years. And granted, the culture sometimes was great, and sometimes I had to tough it out while we had different managers.
Yeah.
But I stuck with it because I could, because I chose to promote and, increase my salary because I increased my responsibilities and had that. And so in the end, if we do not get this there's the silent majority that has got to come forward. Because think about it, if we were to overload our federal legislators with calls from parents and educators, how many educators do you think have ever called or emailed one of their legislators? And they're the ones that are really being hurt. Most of them that go to the public schools don't really want to go there,
Right.
because then you're working under a bureaucracy, like you said, where we have to keep a child whose needs we cannot meet
Yeah.
at the expense of the teacher and all the other children in the group.
Well, also too is the public school district is not known for the other elements of childcare. Yes, there's education, which is obviously very important for kids who are so young, but there is really the true comforting care and security of a child developing for all the other elements of development that the school district and the UPK teachers there are not educated on. They are not part of that social emotional growth, the things that we do so well those aren't being represented in the public school district too. So I know we could spend a lot of time on this one topic, but I'd like us to move on a little bit just so we make sure you get a good point across to everybody as to, what they can end up doing locally or largely throughout.
Right. Well, first of all, I think I've already made this point. You're not alone and you can't fix what is broken in the childcare system alone. And it does require us to really come together as childcare owners and administrators and speak up in one big unified voice. And again, we know what the problem is. We defined it in this call. And we're gonna have to have the backing that public schools have in some way, shape, or form to pay people to want to be able to work in this industry, that want to work. So
Do
if you
you
want to,
do you feel at the federal level as well as the state level that they know of the problems that we have, or do you think that they're unaware of the problem that we?
oh no, they're aware. Tony, one of the things that I really worry about and I, talk about in addition, and this is part of the learning, is that there has been research done for years. And it always goes back to this.
Yeah,
It always goes back to the person in the classroom. And I know from being a multi-unit manager, it always went back to, and I'm sure you found this too, every one of my centers were working under the same curriculum, the same uh, uh, operational guidelines, but it was the director who determined how that was executed. And it's the same, so directors and staff determine how that's executed. And that's why it takes someone that can balance, like you said, not only the intellectual part, of what children are introduced to, but also the emotional,
yeah.
physical, the whole child, as we say. I'm trying to figure out what these school districts are going to do with 3-year-olds that aren't potty trained.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine um, what that's going to look like.
Well, they're putting a 3-year-old by themselves on a bus in the morning.
Oh, I can't think about it. Um, because it just,
It boggles
it
our mind. That's
scares me. It scares me.
And it should scare us to that degree because, and I think that's, for anybody who's in this industry, whether, for everybody got into this industry for different reasons, but most of us have a passion for the development and the care for kids and wanting to have the next generation of kids being the most amazing generation. I think that's one of the real badges that we all wear in this industry. And, different degrees, but it does feel like we are had one and a half arms tied behind our back to be successful here. So advocacy is certainly the way. When you start looking at how to start making sense in this industry and how to speak up, tell us a little bit about what you think we can do because I equate this a little bit to like, the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it at one bite at a
Right
time.
at a time.
You can't do it all at once. And so there's a desire for us to solve this issue at once. But how do you think we start getting started at the local level, at our independent childcare school level?
Well, I think it starts by, once you identify why you might be thinking about selling your business, closing your business, um, or even just continuing the struggle, you have to say, where do I take this concern that
Mhm.
I could potentially, get, some help or solutions? Well, again, I told you earlier, I joined my child care association in Oklahoma. And it was amazing to me, that's how I learned about the federal food program. And for years, we're, able to utilize that program. Um, and my food bill was zero. And I kept having, people at my corporate office saying, well, your food costs are high. I'm like, no, they're not, because I don't have food costs. I can't help it. You put it on the P&L and regular revenue. And because I actually serve the kids enough to eat, I'm not trying to be, cheap and serve 2 chicken nuggets when,
Right.
they need 4 to 6. And, once I taught the CFOs the math over time, other places started using the food program. And again, this is where you can't stay in a silo. You
Right.
cannot stay in a silo. We are also learning, and this has come about in the last 2 years, I would say, because we knew that, ARPA the ARPA money that we received during the pandemic gave some people in some states a lot of relief. And so people kind of sat back, and I don't know why they thought it was going to continue, because it was always going to expire. And I kept saying it, and other people kept saying it. And so now that it's expired and the pain is, back bigger and better than ever, is the Chamber of Commerce's are concerned in most of our, communities about the lack of accessible, affordable childcare. And we are learning that they are really great partners in trying to solve this problem. And they actually, in some cases, have a voice that our legislators want to listen to, because most legislators support small business. And what are we as independent, privately owned childcare centers? We're small businesses. So
Mhm.
we have initiated a conversation uh, at the federal level with the chamber. Um, at the federal level, in fact, we attended one of their childcare summits last year. Again, it's like everything else in government; it moves like a turtle. But the fact that, there is this conversation taking place, and so chambers, they need employees. And it could be, what we're also seeing is that we're seeing employers that are paying stipends of their childcare, their employees' childcare. But unless you're out talking to people who are in those local associations, you may not know that. They may not know that you have room and that you would welcome that opportunity.
Well, one thing that I would say is, which I'm not sure if people saw it, but what came across with the big bill that was passed,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
there is there's a big opportunity there for all of us with childcare, because there is an element in there of some significant credits to corporations who provide childcare to their staff. And that, by the way, even works for childcare who gives a discount to their own employees to have childcare. So it looks like if that can be part of the leverage to get the corporate entities out there to participate and getting their voices heard, that would also be beneficial.
Yes, that's called the 45F.
Okay.
Part of the bill that came through the BBB, the
Yep.
big beautiful bill, that's kind of been buried because there's been a lot of negative voice as to what it didn't do versus, what it did do. And I will tell you, we worked really hard on that bill at the National Child Care Association in conjunction with some of our state associations that are members. We stayed in touch with both Senator Katie Britt in Alabama, who is a Republican that led the charge on the tax on
Good.
the enhancements in that bill that will benefit
Sure.
parents and providers, as you pointed out, or employers. And there is a company that they're called Tutris, and they're also a business affiliate member of the NCCA, and they are really, really working hard with different employers throughout the United States to make them aware of 45F, and also
Okay,
facilitating agreements with companies to help pay childcare stipends for their employees.
right.
And those are the kind of things, Tony, that, we keep our members informed of so that they know what to ask and they
Yep,
know what to say, did you know? Because somebody may not know about 45F. I mean, it just was passed. Plus, your paying customers are going to be getting higher tax returns because they're going to be able to um, take, there's some enhancements in that bill that will allow a family that is paying and, claiming
sure.
childcare.
Well, and unless I have it wrong, which I may, but knowing if you're out there listening, you're like, oh my gosh, I must have missed the boat. No, this starts as of after December 31st this year.
That's correct. So there's still time to learn. And
Yep,
again, I send out information in my newsletters about how that's going to work. What's that going to look like for a family of four that pay X? Because all the agencies that we work with, like Child Care Aware, First 5 Years, they put together, information that helps us interpret the legislation and to know
sure.
what is that going to look like when it, actually is on a tax return. And
Yep,
so knowledge is power. So that's another reason to get out there. Again, I would have never known about the federal food program had I not joined the Oklahoma Child Care Association. And when I was the VP in the Southeast over Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina, and I did meet because I had Georgia and Florida where we also had VPK, universal pre-K
yep,
in both states. And a lot of those children only attended for those hours. I could feed them. And actually that was, and keep them a little longer and give them a good meal. And I was, my last year, my reimbursement included all of my cooks and all of my food and all of my cleaning and paper products. And so think about what that would look like if you were on that program because you were able to be, and what that money that you save can go towards salaries or supplies or something else. And again, I would have never known about that if I hadn't joined the Oklahoma Child Care Association in 1986.
yep. And I think it's really important because you keep on coming back to the same thing, Cindy. You got involved. You got involved. You got involved. And every time you got involved, there was some kind of benefit that actually came back to you somehow. You got
Yes.
through CACFP or through this kind of a program or through other programs, your involvement was very close to then allowing you to see some things that you actually couldn't see today. So I would say there should be a high level of motivation because if you're in a school where you have just one school, maybe you have three schools, um, and you're like, well, my voice just will never get heard, or I'm going to retire in a few years, any of these things. If you want better value for your business, if you want to really spur on what we're trying to do in the industry, there is a lot about trying to get involved. And I agree with you. If you can get involved locally, I think it's important. If you can get involved with NCCA directly, I think that's really important because you guys hold some great conversations and some great calls overall. And then it allows you to partner up with some like-minded people too.
And then when there's something that's, hot, and like, again, the Brit Kane Act, that put in these tax enhancements, when that was all being discussed and we were contacted by, both, Senator Brent and, Kane's, uh, offices, would we support this? And we came back with, yes, we would support it. And then when letters, started being developed by our, partners that, have a lot of influence in DC, like again, Child Care Aware of America, First 5 Years, um, we could send those letters out to all of our members. You could sign on as an individual childcare center. And again, the more we do that, and the longer those and the longer the signature part of those pages get, and that's what we do. We put out action alerts. They go out in our newsletters. Sometimes they go out in e-blast, and we give you an opportunity to just, all you got to do literally is open the action alert. You can read what it's about, whether we're asking for more money in the block grant or again, the tax enhancements, whatever the issue is. You can click it on, type in your zip code. It'll bring up your federal legislatures in the Senate and the House. You can type your own message or you can send the one that's been created for you so that we're rallying around, the same cause. And
Right.
that is, we have got to find ways to make affordable childcare more available in areas that are underserved. And we have to keep our, childcare businesses, strong. I mean, all of the 90% of the childcare providers in this country are small businesses. They're centers and homes. So if all we have left are the corporate sites, that's only 7,000 centers of the over 200,000 that exist.
Yeah.
So we
amazing when you
gotta,
think-
it's either we gotta give, people are gonna have to throw money at it or they're gonna have to throw voice, and we know there's not the money.
Yeah, it almost speaks to the fact that, and it's not even the centers that can do the biggest impact, it's the families of each one of those centers that probably has the biggest voice.
Yes,
So,
and let me tell you, that's the other thing. We have actually provided letters to give to parents, to say, okay, this is what you can do to, if you're concerned that you can't handle this rate increase that we have to keep our doors open,
right,
you're gonna have to take this to the next level. And one of the things that right now, and this was something we've all been pushing, is that now is when Congress is in session. I mean, is out of session the whole month of August. That happens every year. And so your legislators are in their districts. And some of them are already campaigning, because they come up next year for reelection. And invite them to a parent function
yeah,
in your community, because if they come and they meet those constituents and they hear what those constituents have to say, again, some of them are just like totally illiterate to what we do. They
yep.
think we're babysitters.
Well,
And you got to show them what you do. Invite them in during the day.
well, that's one of the things is that I noticed before. I brought in a state senator, and as we all know, politicians love to kiss babies. Okay. Well, there's no better place to come kiss a baby than it is in a child care center, and have them bring their photographer too. But
Yes.
then you bring them in there because of all the good they're going to do and the public PR of being in front of the children of their community. That is the
Mhm.
time to really hit them over the head with, hey, this is what's going on. Because I've been doing that with state senators, local legislators, heads of the Chamber of Commerce, who actually the head of our Chamber of Commerce used to be the lieutenant governor for New York State. But everybody looks at things as hot potatoes. So we're working super hard to say, hey, listen, who really wants to take the bull by the horns to make this happen? We only have a minute left. Cindy, we've already gone through all of our time, but it's been some wonderful conversation as I knew you and I would have. So, is there anything that you wanted to leave everybody with? And any conversation that you think, if there's any point I really want to get across, I'd like to get across this.
Well, I think, you as a business owner, and I mean anybody that's listening that is a business owner, you have to spend time on things that will help sustain your business.
Yeah,
It's not as much as, I had a supervisor many years ago told me I could buy all the Play-Doh and paint I wanted, but I better figure out how to pay for it. And paying for it came through enrollment. But we also know that if we don't have teachers, qualified teachers, we can't enroll to capacity. And at the same time, I think some of our issues with the cost of insurance have came from there's more liability issues in childcare because when you turn staff, you're constantly training and
Right.
teaching. So again, you're going to have to decide to spend a little time, if nothing else, read my newsletter and weigh
Yeah.
in federally if you can't get out of your center. I know that Regina Miller, who is someone we both know well, Tony,
Yep.
took time away from her business last year to join some of our other NCCA members, and we went to the Hill. And
That's
we
fantastic.
went to our legislators but asked me if we needed more. We didn't have enough. And again, Regina, along with some other members, but since Regina's on this call, I wanted to call out that, she is an owner and she has learned how to take time away from her business to be an advocate at the local, state, and federal level. And again, I'm sure she would welcome, to talk to anybody as I am to say, how do you make that time? And some of that comes from, being a better leader. And, I know that Tony, your organization has training for that.
Absolutely.
And I think affiliating yourself with an organization like Tony, that's part of that's a part of a connection. And he brings information to you like this and his other webinars, but you got to act on it.
Yeah.
You cannot leave this call today and not do something different.
Well, and I want to give people out there one last nugget, which I think is when you talk about advocacy and you get involved with your local legislator, your local senator, or your chamber of commerce person, sometimes you feel like, well, I'm doing all this effort and my voice won't be heard. But one of the things where it will benefit you directly, and it can benefit you directly, is you are making a relationship with another person. And that person is someone that we've employed to be a representative of us, of you, of your business. And the value of that is that you work with a state senator, you talk with them, you go to meetings that state senator is at, or that local legislator is at, or that head of the Chamber of Commerce. And then for some reason you get in hot water. You get in hot water with licensing, or you had a CACFP audit that didn't go very well, or the state is really trying to run over you. That relationship you have with that state politician could be very beneficial for you, that you have a name to name basis. So there is an intrinsic value for you out there to build those relationships locally as well as statewide. And then obviously working with someone like Cindy federally. But it's beyond just saying, hey, I'm going to advocate for everybody else. This is really helping your own business. And there is a lot of value for you. And it's okay to be, in our industry, it's okay for you to advocate for yourself because no one else is going to advocate for you. And that's what Cindy is sort of saying today is, hey, we're all trying to advocate together, but if you're not involved, you can't expect much results. You can't expect much results if you don't get involved. So I think it's been a fantastic message. I want to greatly thank you, Cindy, for being on our webinar as you have come on before, and we always love having you here. So hopefully we can see you again soon. I'm sure I'll see you at some shows or something soon, which would be wonderful. I get to get a hug from you.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for your time. I'm going to do a little bit of end of the call housekeeping, but thank you so much. Tell Storm I said hi, as well as the rest of the team.
It's always a pleasure. So thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. Thank you so much. And for those of you, if you do need a certificate, obviously that's being put into the chat right now. This will be sent out for replay. Also, we make this into a podcast for its care for the child care owner. So you will see that as a podcast coming out too. And if you haven't gone to our podcast, go to inspirecare360.com to resources, and you'll see two different podcasts that you can go through your local podcast provider, whoever your favorite is, whether it be through Apple, Spotify, Amazon, what have you. You can download the podcast automatically, and you'll have Care for the Child Care Owner, which is a replay of these webinars, as well as ECE CEO Biography. This is where we're interviewing some of the larger child care owners and operators in the industry and talking to them. How have they been successful? Why were they able to ascend the way they have? What were the tough times? What were the easier times? What did they do to really move their schools to the next level? So you can download that when you're in the car, just pop those in and play them. We have one a month, and they're just great conversations. We have one coming up with Mary Jo, who is the CEO of Primrose. You'll be hearing that one soon. And so that'll be coming up at the very beginning of September. So again, if you do want to have, and you haven't heard or had gone through a presentation yet about Inspire Care 360 and what we do, whether it be our healthcare or whether it be all the learning and development, our CDAs and everything that we do to really get you to the next level, we do offer a $30 gift card for anybody who's new to that, and just reach out to Kim. All right. But I want to thank you. We have our next one coming up in October right now. We may have one, I think, in early September. So you might see another one, but one that's booked for sure is with Mecca Johnson. Mecca's been on a couple of years ago, and she's just absolutely wonderful. And so this is Tony D'Agostino, founder and CEO of Inspire Care 360. I want to thank you so much for joining Cindy, as well as myself today, and all of you, and have a wonderful day. You take care and have a great day. Bye now.